They saved me a chair, but not a place. My name is Maren Whitaker, 33, middle child who learned to pour gravy quietly and stack chairs without being asked. The house smelled like cinnamon and roast rosemary, and the front yard glowed with white lights my father always clipped too high on the maple. I drove 6 hours to be on time, carried 2 pies, and walked in behind my brother's booming laugh. He wore a sweater in university colors, hugged everyone on the way to the television, and did not look at me. Coats in the guest room, my mother said, brushing past with a platter. She kissed my cheek without stopping, then asked my sister if the engagement photos were edited. My sister raised her hand, diamonds catching the kitchen light, and tilted the phone like a trophy. I stood beside the sink, holding pies that fogged my glasses, waiting for where to place them. Nobody noticed the fog. Dinner stretched with the practiced choreography of long habit. My father carved, my mother served, my brother narrated the year like a highlight reel. I spooned potatoes for my cousins and passed rolls to the end seat. When I looked for a spot, a folding chair waited near the hallway, angled toward the kitchen door. A place that let you stand quickly if something was needed. A place that did not interrupt the view of the game on mute. Kids' tables full, my aunt said, smiling at the toddlers. Maren, you don't mind there, right? You're so flexible. I said it was fine. I have said it was fine in more rooms than I care to count. The chair legs scraped, and the noise pulled a glance or two, then faded. I ate slowly, tasting every careful thing, the baked carrots I once learned to make on a night my mother had the flu, the rolls I proofed at sunrise when I was 19, the cranberry I canned last week to be useful. No one asked about my work. The family story is simple. My brother is decisive and important. My sister understands people and events. I am good with details. I buy ribbons. I remember to bring batteries. Last year I repaired the door hinge. The year before, I fixed the router. This year, my sister announced the destination wedding plans while my cousin recorded on his phone. Laughter rose, chairs shifted, and the table pulled into a circle I could not step into without bumping knees. When the coffee came, my aunt asked me to pour. She knew I never spilled. I did as asked, then passed cream toward my father. He was reading messages with his glasses low on his nose. He thanked me without looking up. The thank you landed like a receipt. Some hurts do not break you. They sand you down until your shape no longer fits the place it came from. I looked at the people who taught me to hold my tongue, to keep lists, to save money for emergencies. I looked at the house with the door that stuck in winter, the chimney that needed repointing, the mortgage my parents carried since my brother left for college. My chair faced the hallway, toward the quiet little desk where my mother kept a stack of mail. Somewhere under that stack, 3 white envelopes waited with my neat handwriting. I had walked them in while everyone checked coats. Nobody had asked what I was doing. When my father raised his glass for the toast he gives every year, I held mine without standing. He praised perseverance, family, and second chances. We take care of our own, he said, a phrase he uses like a period. People clinked. I did not. The ring of glass sounded like distant bells. I realized then that the silence inside me was not the old kind. It was not surrender. It was the space you clear when you are about to lift something heavy with both hands. The room moved as if I were located slightly out of frame. My mother stacked plates into my hands with a smile that said she trusted me to carry weight. My sister took a soft photo with a filter that made the table glow like a magazine spread. My brother's arm hooked around our father's shoulders, and they stared at the game's ticker as if news might thunder through it. What have you been up to, Maren? My cousin asked from the couch. He did not look away from the sports scroll. He asked the way people ask the weather while pulling on their boots. Work, I said. I own a quiet little bookkeeping firm with 3 employees and too many late-night emails. We help small businesses that cannot afford mistakes. We fix budgets that crossed wires and invoices that never reconciled. I never talk about it on holidays. Numbers do not impress this table unless they arrive with confetti and venture capital. Still freelancing? My aunt asked, gentle and vague. Something like that, I said, because the word still would spawn 30 cheerful opinions, and I did not bring armor for that conversation. I carried dessert instead. In the kitchen, my mother stood at the sink, rinsing each plate the long way, as if careful motion could erase the sentence she never finished saying to me at 22, that she hoped I would marry someone steady, that she worried I was too independent to be happy, that she loved my practical heart but wished it would beat a little closer to home. She has never said I am not enough. She has simply placed me where I am most useful and checked that the water stayed hot. It was not always like this. When I was 9, I stood on a chair to stir a pot too tall for me, and my father bragged that I had the patience of a mason. When I was 14, I won a county essay contest, and my mother framed the certificate. When I was 19, I drove home at midnight to fix the printer so my brother could send a paper on time. When I was 26, I offered to help manage their refinance after my father's hours were cut. I did the math and found the leak points. I put the plan on paper and handed it to my parents. They thanked me with a check for my time, which I returned in an envelope marked laundry room repairs. We take care of our own. The phrase can be chain or shelter, depending on which end of it you hold. I carried the pies to the table and cut equal slices. As the plates went around, the sound in the room tilted toward the engagement slideshow my sister projected on the wall. My brother told a story about a contract he closed. My uncle mentioned a cabin he might buy. I noted every mortgage term they used incorrectly and let it go. I have learned when correction costs more than error. The first sting came when the nieces and nephews performed their rehearsed carol. They were sweet and brave. People clapped, and my sister reached for my forearm to squeeze. "Can you film the second verse?" she whispered. "My hands are full." She did not wait for my answer. She knew I would. While I filmed, my father told a neighbor that my brother really pulled his weight this year, then patted my shoulder like you pat a sturdy table. "Maren keeps us organized," he said. It was meant kindly. It was the kind that trims you to fit a title. I set my phone down. My hands trembled, not with anger, but with a tiredness that felt ancient. I had brought something more than dessert. It sat in the hallway, in 3 white envelopes placed above the unpaid light bill and the local newsletter. My name, in blue ink, curled under the flap, even though the contents were not about me at all. At 9, my mother asked me to hold the mixing bowl while she added flour, saying, "Steady now." At 33, I stood between the table and the hallway, and I felt the same instruction pass through my bones. Steady now. I decided I would wait until the dishes were done and the living room softened into late evening lull. I would wait until the neighbor finished his story about snow tires and until my sister changed into slippers. There would be no scene. There would be no fight. There would only be paper. A vow is not a shout. It is a handle you close your fist around and carry. The discovery did not happen that night. It happened in August, in a bank office that smelled faintly of paper and lemon wipes. I sat across from Grace Ellison, a branch manager with sleeves rolled up past her elbows, a woman who learned to read numbers like weather. We met 3 years earlier when I untangled a bakery's book she cared about. She has a voice that makes you want to tell the truth. That day, I told her mine. "My parents want to age in place," I said. "They won't move, not even for a smaller house. They are stubborn in the way that looks like love when you squint. They still carry a balance they cannot shake." Grace typed and hummed. "They refinanced 7 years back," she said. "They cut the term but added a small home equity line in a weak month. It happens. She printed an amortization schedule, then slid it over. They're not drowning. They are tired of swimming. We mapped payments with a pencil. I marked birthdays and tax dates. Numbers behave when you offer them a home. Grace drew a rectangle around a possibility. If someone paid the remaining principal in a lump sum, she said, the bank would issue a satisfaction of mortgage, and your parents would receive discharge papers from the county once recorded. Someone, I repeated. It sounded like a stranger. It sounded like a daughter who had kept her head down and stacked cash for 10 years while eating noodles and negotiating software licenses at midnight. Can you afford it? She asked, not gently, not cruelly, just precisely. I can, I said. My firm's biggest client had sold their business in April. They paid outstanding invoices with gratitude that surprised me. I did not tell my family because telling invites opinions about windfalls. Grace looked at me for a long second. Then you will need a notary, and you will need to prepare them for property tax implications. We can waive some fees. I can also mark the account to stop autopay the moment the wire clears. I did not decide that day. I went home, laid the schedule under a lamp, and thought about the house I grew up in. The door that stuck. The maple that held our winter lights. The square of sun on the dining room rug every 10 a.m. The crowded fridge door. All the times it held us when we were wrong, when we were petty, when we were loud. We take care of our own. I called 2 weeks later. Do it, I told Grace. My voice felt like a level held to a line. We arranged the transfer. We collected the stamps. We waited the 3 days the system requires for what it calls settlement, as if numbers need air to set like cement. The packet arrived in early October, thick and unassuming, the county recorder's seal pressed in dull gold. Satisfaction of mortgage. Discharge. Lien released. I traced the embossed seal with my thumb. My mother called that afternoon to ask if I could bring a pie to Christmas, maybe 2 if it was not too much trouble. I said yes, and my heart did not sting. It beat steadily. I told one person, because even quiet good needs to be witnessed. My downstairs neighbor, Rowan, is a social worker who waters my plants when I am away. He sat at my small table and listened, forearms on the wood, a person who understands the difference between saving and rescuing. You are paying off your parents' house, he said. And you are going to tell no one. I am going to tell them, I said. But I will not make it a performance. I will not ask for gratitude the way a thirsty person asks for rain. You want them to be free, he said. I want the house to release them, I said. And maybe it will release me. We rehearsed nothing. I bought a box of good envelopes, the kind with linen texture and a dignified weight. I folded the certified letters behind a simple note in my handwriting, paid in full. Record enclosed. Merry Christmas. M. The plan felt clean. It felt like something my father would understand if he could look at me without the story he tells about me getting in the way. It felt like something my mother would tuck away, then pull out on a day when the sink stopped twice and the news was bad, and she needed to be reminded that a long, faithful life can still surprise you. In December, I slipped the envelopes onto the hallway desk before I took off my coat. They sat there all evening while people repeated the year to one another, while I counted out forks, while a niece sang the loudest and a dog begged predictably, while the old narratives did what they always do. They sat there and did not demand attention. Neither did I. I only waited for the room to soften. The confrontation, if you can call it that, began with the sound of wrapping paper and a child's serious voice. We had moved to the living room. The tree lights blinked like steady breath. My mother passed around her traditional small gifts, useful things wrapped with too much tape. My father handed out envelopes with a 50 tucked inside for each grandchild, a ritual that made him smile. When it was my turn, my mother gave me a scarf and a candle that smelled like pine. She patted my knee. "You always need something warm," she said. Then the circle paused, empty hands folding, the way a room waits for a cue. "I have something," I said, standing with the envelopes. My voice did not rise. It made a clear path to the rug. "These are for you, Mom. And you, Dad." My sister looked up from her phone, curious. My brother leaned back, eyes quick with calculation, as if a pitch were coming. My aunt smiled in the polite way people smile when they prepare to receive a handmade thing and summon praise that will not land quite right. I handed one envelope to my mother and one to my father. "Please open them now," I said. Short, simple. My hands did not shake. I had held heavier bowls. My mother slid her finger carefully under the flap. The paper made the dry whisper sound that always makes me think of autumn. She read the note, then the heading on the document, then looked at the seal, then back to the heading. My father flipped pages the way he reads news, scanning for numbers. "Satisfaction of mortgage," he read aloud. The room stilled, as if the house itself drew a breath. He turned to me, slow. "Maren." "It is paid," I said. "Principal, interest, fees. The discharge has been recorded. Grace at the bank will confirm in the morning. The auto-pay has been stopped." "You did this?" he asked. He did not stand up, and I did not step closer. Our distance was exact and true. "Yes," I said. "How?" my brother asked, quick and clipped, a word with too many meanings inside it. "Work," I said. One syllable, unadorned. "I don't understand," my mother said, paper trembling. "Why would you?" "Because you should not go to bed every night thinking about numbers you cannot move," I said. "Because this house held us. Because I could." My sister's eyes shone. "Maren," she whispered. She did not say anything else. For once, there was no advice. My aunt reached for the page, stopped, and folded her hands in her lap instead. My father's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He looked at the word satisfaction as if it might argue with him. "You should have told us," he said finally. "I am telling you now," I replied. "We could have." "You could have insisted on refusing," I said, still calm. "You could have made it a debate about pride. You could have found a dozen reasons to say no to something already done for you. I did not want to make you perform humility when what you needed was rest." His face worked through a set of expressions I could not name. My brother exhaled a soft sound that might have been yes or might have been a laugh. My mother put her fingers to the seal again, as if pressing it would fix it to reality. "Taxes?" my uncle asked from the chair by the window, the practical note of his voice oddly kind. "Covered for the adjustment period," I said. "Funds set aside. If you bring me the bill, I will show you the line." No one clapped. No one rushed to hug me. The room held a stillness that felt earned, like a held breath at the end of a hymn. Outside, the maple light strings rattled a little in the wind. Inside, the tree blinked steadily. My father placed the papers on his knee and traced the edges with his thumb. He looked at me then, not through me, not around me, but at me, the way he looks at a beam he is about to trust. "Thank you," he said. 2 words, the exact size of the moment. "You're welcome," I said. I sat down. The candle on the end table seemed too bright, so I turned the wick lower. Someone coughed. Someone laughed softly, then stopped. My mother stood and brought me a napkin I did not need. Old instincts move even in new rooms. No one spoke about my chair or my usefulness or my habit of buying batteries. No one made a joke. The house sounded like winter, the hush that follows snowfall, when even the road seems to listen. Justice, I thought, does not always arrive like a gavel. Sometimes it is paper placed into careful hands, and the sound it makes is the soft click of a lock turning open. Morning arrived in a pale wash, steady and merciful. I woke early on the couch because the guest room was full of suitcases and a crib. The house made its familiar old house sounds, pipes ticking, the furnace catching, the note of heat traveling through vents. I lay still and watched the light move across the ceiling, a slow relief. In the kitchen, my mother moved as if the floor beneath her had changed grade by a fraction. She stirred oatmeal, then stopped, then stirred again, as if remembering she had time. She set a bowl in front of me and tucked a stray hair behind my ear, a gesture from another year that slipped free. "I didn't sleep much," she said. "Me either," I answered. "Your father was up at 5, she said. He went to the basement and stared at the breaker box, then came back upstairs and made a list of things to check. Not repairs, just things he wanted to look at, knowing he is not doing them for a bank anymore." She smiled without looking at me. "He kept saying we have to get the door rehung before late January. He said it like a man who believes the door will open." We ate in a kind silence. The house felt wider. When my father came in from the garage, he had dust on his hands. He washed them carefully, then dried them, then turned to me and leaned on the counter. "Grace confirmed," he said. "I believed you. I needed the call." "I know," I said. He took a breath so deep I heard his ribs expand. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "For letting you be the helper because it was easy. For not asking who you are now. For keeping you in the story where you were useful, and not in the one where you were powerful." I did not make him perform more apology than he had. The words were enough. He reached for my shoulder, awkward and true. "I can never repay you," he said. "You already did," I said. "You raised me to carry weight." The morning unspooled in small, pleasant work. I fixed the loose knob on the linen closet. My brother took the ladder out to check the gutters and, for once, did not narrate. My sister made an honest cup of coffee and handed it to me without advice tucked under the foam. My mother stood in the doorway and watched us with her hands in her sweater sleeves, a woman learning how rest feels on her bones. At noon, my niece asked if the house belonged to us now. "It always did," I said. "But now it will not ask for rent." She nodded, satisfied. Children understand the difference between keeping and borrowing better than most adults. We went outside and stood on the walk to breathe cold air. The maple branches lifted and settled. The strings of white lights looked less like display and more like promise. I packed to leave late in the afternoon. My father walked me to the car with his hat on, the one with paint on the brim. "You'll visit before New Year?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I'll bring a drill." He almost smiled. "Bring your ledger," he said. "Your mother wants to look at the budget together. She said she feels like she is stepping onto a boat and needs to find her feet." "I have a simple template," I said. "We can start there." He touched the car roof and stepped back. "Maren," he said, like a new word spoken slowly. "Thank you." I nodded and drove, the road opening in clean lanes. Back home, I set my suitcase by the door and fed my plants. Rowan knocked and leaned against the frame. "Did it land?" he asked. "It landed," I said. Quietly. Solid as a beam. He grinned and handed me a small paper bag tied with baker's string. "Your favorite dumplings," he said. "A reward for lifting heavy things." I ate standing at the counter. When I was finished, I washed the dish, turned out the light, and let the apartment hold me. The stillness felt earned. In the distance, someone laughed on the sidewalk. A siren passed and faded. I looked at the empty space on my shelf where the envelopes had been, a small absence that meant something had been set down in the right place. There will be other dinners. There will be years where we forget and remember and forget again what we mean to one another. The house will need its roof checked. The door will stick in late January. My mother will call to ask about a number. My father will send me a photo of a perfectly rehung hinge with a caption that says, "Level now." My brother will ask me to look at a spreadsheet, and I will say yes because the story can change without breaking. Quiet revenge is not about winning. It is about giving back to yourself the ground you were asked to surrender. It is about letting paper do the talking and then letting the room become still enough to hear it. It is about refusing the scene, choosing the beam, and walking out lighter. The maple will hold its lights again next year. I will stand on the sidewalk and look at the house that does not owe anyone anything, and I will feel the clean click of a lock in my chest. Satisfaction, recorded. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.